Hello everyone, this is Alborz Pakravan and I'm an economic advisor with House of Liberty. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to discuss sanctions and bring a little bit of an interdisciplinary approach to the debate. My background is in mechanical engineering and economics. I'm trying to make a case about what I am expecting from IRGC to do in terms of sourcing the material they need for missiles and drones they produce. So let me start with one example, and that is if you follow a certain recipe that a famous chef like Gordon Ramsay puts on YouTube, it's not going to necessarily end up with the same meal that Gordon Ramsay makes himself. That has a notion to it, and that is essentially knowing how to make good equipment or precise equipment does not mean a certain country could actually manufacture them. This is particularly important when we look at cases like how blue LED was developed, the enormous amount of R&D that goes through coming up with the right equipment that is significant. You cannot simply manufacture a high fidelity sensor that works in speeds beyond Mach, supersonic speeds, the same way you manufacture a sensor that's used in appliances like washers and dryers. So this is important to understand that we need to focus not only on the knowledge, but also the equipment and hardware itself. That is the case because after October 7th, that IRGC missiles and drones were witnessed by the world in action, they got humiliated because of the lack of precision of those equipment. Now it only makes sense from IRGC perspective to increase precision of their missiles and drones. To do that, there are three elements needed. You need to have precise sensing, you need to have fast and reliable processing of the data, and you need to act in a fast way using the right actuators that could act precisely. The three elements I just mentioned require very sophisticated equipment. That is, you should definitely develop a sensor, you should definitely develop a chip and an actuator that works in speeds beyond Mach, in environments that are harsh and, for example, Earth orbit for a ballistic missile. And this is not an easy task. In fact, there is a significant body of knowledge, books, papers, research that goes into developing electronic equipment that could work in these environments. Now it brings us to the case, if IRGC wants to get access to these equipment, what do they have to do? They need to know how to make them, but it's not easy to make them because I just mentioned takes 20 years of R&D to come up with the right sensors that could work in harsh environments. In addition to that, you need to have the right equipment, specifically semiconductor grade equipment that right now even China doesn't have. These are the logistics solely in the hands of United States and the industries in the US and in the Europe. So we need to make sure they cannot get those equipment. That's a significant statement, but there are mechanisms in the West essentially to prevent Iranians or Chinese or Russians to get hold of these equipment, semiconductor manufacturing equipment. When they cannot get these equipment to manufacture these sensors and equipment, the second option is to source them internationally. Now, as an Iranian agent of IRGC or Islamic Republic affiliated businessman, you cannot go to international market and source a sensor for a missile. That's also already established, that's sanctioned. So what remains as the option is to go after dual purpose material. That means go after the material that could be that in the front there's a facade for humanitarian or non-military application, but they are going to be used in military applications. Let me give you an example. I just talked about harsh environments and speeds beyond sound speed. That is also the case for the equipment that's being used in CT scan machines, because the CT scan gantry is also rotates faster than the speed of sound sometimes. In fact, the equipment that are in the gantry of a CT scan sustain 17 times acceleration or force of gravity of Earth. 17 Gs. So those equipment may be used in CT scan machines, may be used in ballistic missiles. So what do we do with the dual purpose material? We need to make sure the dual purpose materials are going through an inspection process and they're going to be used as intended. Luckily, there is a solution to that. Private industry in oil and gas, for example, have for a long time worked how to prevent oil and gas industry in sanctioned countries like Islamic Republic not to use their equipment, specific valves in oil and gas industry. And they have come up with approaches. We could use those experiences. In addition, we need to make sure that elements of IRGC cannot find themselves as businessmen who specifically are in other industries that trade in a dual purpose material. There are technical solutions as well. We need to make sure if an equipment is dual purpose, when it's running, it is geolocating itself and it sends a signal through IoT devices that it is working as intended and all the pieces of the machine are all together. Otherwise, the machine would shut down or destruct itself. We also need to make sure that Iranian students coming from Iran are not involved in the research in the universities that are associated with the dual purpose material in certain fields, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and chemical engineering. We need to make sure trade with Iran in terms of medical devices or any other equipment that is dual purpose is randomly and frequently vetted and inspected. We also need to make sure if a certain equipment is dual purpose, we designate certain geolocation functionality, IoT functionality that lets us know that the equipment is being used in the right location as intended with the right application. There are many other solutions that we could come up with if a group of engineers, group of scientists, economists, and policymakers gather together to find how to counter the terrorism of IRGC and Islamic Republic and how to nullify that threat internationally. Mohammad Abedini, who was sanctioned by the Treasury Department in the United States, is a good example. He came to EPFL as a postdoc researcher. He worked on certain dual purpose application. He developed a sensor, started a startup, and sent those sensors that he developed in EPFL with the support of EPFL and other university resources to Iran. Those sensors ended up in drones that were used against Ukrainians. So these are the things that we are witnessing already happening, and we need to have a swift and very strong response to prevent them. That does not mean we should prevent Iranian people to get access to the medical devices. We just need to be smart about it. We just need to make sure medical equipment or any equipment that is dual purpose is going to Iran but is being used as intended, and we do have a contingency plan that if the equipment is not used in the right way, we need to stop that transfer, we need to destruct that tool, and we need to investigate the people in the EU or in the US that were involved in shipping and basically facilitating the equipment to end up with IRGC. I think we presented a lot of ideas here. I would be happy to further discuss these ideas in future. Thank you for your time and hope to see you in person next time.